This story is about a haunted apartment my parents lived in when they were first married. It was a small, one-bedroom apartment in Vermont. They made friends with their downstairs neighbors, who consisted of another young couple and their son who was around 5 years old. My mom ended up babysitting the boy on a regular basis. Every time he came over, he would always ask his imaginary friend, Mr. Edwards, to show him his butterfly collection. They just chalked it up to the kid being weird. Odd things would happen in the apartment as well. While my parents never actually saw things being physically moved, they would set items down and discover it laying somewhere else. One night, my mom had a horrible nightmare. In her dreams, she was standing in a dark room and heard growling coming from behind her. She turned around to see a German shepherd running at her, snarling with teeth gnashing. She said it seemed like the dog was running almost in slow motion, but was quickly gaining speed. If this wasn't terrifying enough for her, the dog's eyes were missing, with 2 black eye sockets being in their place. My mom woke up in a cold sweat, screaming. My dad worked nights, so there was no one there to comfort her after the traumatic nightmare. My parents went to pay their rent to the landlord, and they mentioned the strange things happening in the apartment. "Oh, that's probably just Mr. Edwards." My parents were shocked to hear the name, as they had also heard the young boy talk about a Mr. Edwards. That wasn't the end of the coincidences, though. Mr. Edwards owned a butterfly collection. Mr. Edwards also was blind and owned a seeing eye dog. The dog was a German shepherd. My parents moved out a month later. After speaking with my dad, there's another piece of information that makes this story a little bit creepier. The 5-year-old my mom was babysitting not only talked to an invisible Mr. Edwards, he appeared to hold his invisible hand as well. While walking around the apartment, he would regularly hold up his hand as if he was holding his hands with an adult. When I was 17, my girlfriend and I agreed to babysit for my cousins. We started babysitting in the afternoon, around 2 p.m. Fast forward to 1 a.m. and there still was no sign of my cousins. We tried to message them, but got no reply. We brushed it off, thinking they were too drunk and would be back soon. Before babysitting, we were warned about some sketchy incidents in the area. Threats to smash windows, attempts to kick down doors, usual crime in a rough neighborhood. We didn't really take it seriously, thinking it won't happen while we're here, but we were dead wrong. 30 minutes later, I heard a noise outside. I asked my girlfriend if she heard it, but she dismissed it as me imagining things. 10 minutes later, a brick crashed through the window, landing on the sofa. I rushed outside, hoping to catch the culprit, but they were gone. The house had an alleyway on the left leading to the back garden and the neighboring house. It was pitch black. Despite being scared, I turned my phone's flashlight on and walked down the alleyway. That's when I saw a figure in a black hoodie crouched down in the narrow alley about 15 feet ahead of me. The dim light from my phone's flashlight revealed just enough for me to make out the silhouette, sending shivers down my spine. The atmosphere grew tense as our eyes met, and a chill ran through me. In that intense moment, a surge of fear paralyzed me as the person in the hoodie abruptly broke eye contact and launched himself towards me. Without a second thought, I bolted away back into the house, frantically locking the door behind me. My hands trembled uncontrollably as the adrenaline coursed through my veins. The silhouette burned in my mind like a nightmare I couldn't escape. Inside, the kids were downstairs and confused. My girlfriend comforted them. She cleaned up the mess of the broken window while I called the police, fearing the person might still be outside. The police arrived quickly and took our information and promised to patrol the area. An hour later, the police knocked again and signaled for me to follow them. In the patrol car, I saw the man in the back seat with his hands cuffed. He had matched the description I gave. The parents finally returned a few hours later, worried but relieved their kids were okay. They thanked us, paid us, and we were headed home around 4 a.m. Days later, we found out it was the mother's crazy ex with intentions to harm her. Luckily, she wasn't home. When he was arrested, they found a knife in his pocket. I realized that if I had tried to confront him, I could have ended up dead or seriously hurt. When I was around 14, something happened to me that still gives me chills today. My mom used to work as a bartender at a local bar. Back then, I lived on a busy block and used to babysit for the bartenders in the neighborhood who had kids. It was easy money. The bar was just down the road, and once they finished their shifts, they could come pick up their kids. One Friday night, I had 3 more kids to look after than usual, but it was expected given that it was a Friday night. I had got the kids settled upstairs and decided to relax by watching a movie. The layout of my living room had the TV on the wall and the couch between the door and windows. As I reached for the remote to turn the TV on, something caught my eye in the dark reflection of the TV. Behind me, looking through the door, was a middle-aged man, just staring blankly into my house. I felt my heart drop into my stomach, realizing I had no idea who this man was and what he was doing. I put the remote down, pretending not to see him, and picked up my phone. Panicking, I called my mom. I tried to make it look like I was scrolling through my phone, but in reality, I was watching him to make sure he didn't move. The man turned to leave the window's view and walked towards the street. I felt a surge of relief wash over me. My mom finally picked up her phone, and I frantically tried to explain the situation. Suddenly, I heard the bushes at the side of the house being torn through. I knew what he was doing. At the side of the house was a big window low enough for a person to climb in and out of. Without thinking straight, I dropped my phone and screamed, "He's trying to get in," and ran to the kitchen and grabbed the biggest knife I could find. I ran back to the window and saw him just standing there, looking in with a creepy smile plastered on his face. I watched him, angrily yelling that I wasn't afraid to cut him. Looking back at it now, I was a 5'2" 14-year-old who could barely stand straight. He obviously wasn't scared as he reached for the window, pulling it up. I slammed it back down and locked it on top. He just looked at me, giving this pouty face as if I was the one in the wrong. Just then, bright lights and people shouting at the man came into view. The man's pouty expression quickly changed to panic as he ran the opposite way of the car. Apparently my mom and the other bartenders listening to our conversation and a few ex-military men were having drinks at the bar. Hearing the situation from my mom, the ex-military men and the other bartenders drove to my house. I don't remember much after that, just unlocking the door to my mom crying and hugging me instantly, and the other bartenders running in to check in on their kids. The man was never caught, although he never came back. I still don't know how long he was standing there, just watching, waiting, and listening.